Hi guys, what's up? My name is Talisa Caldwell and I'm the founder of a company called Freedom Creators Co. We are a toxin-free skincare company that not only makes really great skincare, but we also help to support orphan children in Uganda through our sales and by sourcing our coffee and hopefully in the future some like shea butter and awesome things as well in order to help to create a sustainable economy for them as well as give a sustainable source of income to the orphanages themselves. So that being said, I wanted to come on here today and just give you guys a laydown of why I started my business, what the heck skincare has to do with orphan children in Uganda, why I started working with children in Uganda in the first place, and a little bit more about me and who I am and why I'm so passionate about building Freedom Creators Co. But before I dive into all that, please guys, if you like this sort of content, then go ahead and like and subscribe to my channel where I share a whole bunch of behind the scenes, some business tips, a little bit of story behind the Freedom Creators Co. We also go do like random adventures in the world. If you want to watch me build my business from a small business into a large company, then you guys should definitely follow this channel. I started Freedom Creators Co. actually as a jewelry business. And it originally was me making a bunch of jewelry as well as making some skincare products on the side. So I have always been a person who is entrepreneurial. Before I started my business, I was a musician full-time. And I just realized that I really didn't like to work for other people. I kind of wanted to build my own thing. And I realized that probably around the age of 20, when I dropped out of college and decided to start pursuing music. I traveled the world. I went to India, Nepal, and Thailand, playing music, just living life. And that's where I fell in love with international travel. I kind of went through a hard time, and I'll probably explain this in a later video, but I became friends with a person named Robert, and he actually owned an orphanage in Uganda. And before I say this, yes, disclaimer, don't just trust anybody from Africa who approaches you and says, I have an orphanage, will you support me? There's a lot of scams out there. But why did I trust this orphanage? Well, one of my friends from a hard season in life actually went to that orphanage herself. I saw pictures of her. I knew it was legit. She, for some reason, told Robert about me, and Robert decided to reach out to me. So that's how I became connected with an orphanage in Uganda. Fast forward probably about 7 or 8 years, I was making my own jewelry, starting this company, not really knowing what I wanted out of life. And then I got pregnant with my firstborn son, Ezra, who's an amazing, amazing child. After I got pregnant, I knew that I had to create a sustainable lifestyle for myself and for my son. And I knew I couldn't do that by just floating around, playing music, traveling the world. As much as I wanted to actually break off the chains of generational poverty and create something that my son could take with him into the future. I was somebody who suffered with eczema my entire life, and there's like nothing out there that could work for my skin. Everything would make me break out. Everything was full of fragrances that gave me headaches. So I was like, you know what? I'm just gonna make my own lotion for myself because your girl didn't want to get stretch marks when she was having a baby. And so I came up with this formula, which actually became my biggest selling product. My skin balm. The skin balm made with 4 simple ingredients, which is shea butter, coconut oil, beeswax, and grapeseed oil. So I started using it on myself and I noticed a huge difference in my skin. For one, I was no longer having any eczema breakouts. And for 2, I wasn't getting any stretch marks. And for a pregnant person, that's like insane, you guys. So I knew that I had come across something pretty amazing. COVID hits and I luckily had a little boost. A lot of businesses came up during this time. I don't know if it was for the same reason as me, but I feel like I was just bored. I was at home. I was like, let me make this a real business instead of just kind of like selling this stuff on the side. And again, I really didn't know what I was doing with my life at the time, and I knew I wanted to create something for my son. I decided to get an LLC for my business. I had moved in with my sister because the relationship that I was in with my son's father was very, very toxic and unhealthy, and I didn't want to continue it. So here I am living on my own, well, living with my sister and her kids, as well as having a 8-month-old baby. I knew that I had a decision to make at that time. I had to figure out what I was doing with my life because it not only affected me, it also affected my son. I had about $300 to my name, and call me crazy, but I felt the Lord tell me to invest that money into a business. And so I did. I took all of that money that I had and I started investing it into buying jewelry supplies because I was still making jewelry with the business at the time, and buying some skincare supplies because I was like, jewelry and skincare, why not? And then also to get an LLC. Freedom Creators Co. officially became an LLC in November of 2020. But let me tell you guys, I had no idea what I was doing. First of all, jewelry and skincare, I don't know, doesn't really make sense. But I started taking my jewelry, I started taking my skincare and going to markets. I literally had my son in a basket at the markets with me because I couldn't even afford childcare, you guys. And so he would come along with me. It was definitely a really hard season, but I remember at my first market, I made about $300. And I was like, oh, that is so much money. Because at the time I was like, I didn't know that I could make that much just by selling little things that I had created. And you guys, my packaging was not great. I had no idea what branding was. Like, I had no idea what a business was. But I started doing it anyways and go to these markets, started noticing that I was selling out of my skincare more than I was selling my jewelry. So I think probably about a year later, I decided to just cut off the jewelry completely and just focus on the skincare. Continued doing markets and trying to figure out what the heck online was. I built a website and was doing all of this. I was working a couple like little side jobs as well. I do modeling, I've done serving, just kind of like doing all these things alongside growing this business, having a life, being a single mom. And y'all, it was rough, okay? Not gonna lie, these were probably the most formative but hardest years of my life. One thing to kind of get you into the mindset of where I was financially, when I finally moved into my own apartment, me and my son the first night slept on a pile of laundry. As difficult as that is to imagine, I'm actually kind of glad that I have that story now, because now I am so grateful for all that I do have. Even in times when things are rough, I know that God is always going to get me through it. I know that you might see on social media that a lot of these companies just seem to blow up overnight. Or, you know, people who started a business in 2020, their businesses are a lot further along than mine. But one thing that I found out is that you really can't compare your story to somebody else's. Like someone like me, I had absolutely no business experience. I really didn't have support. I was raising a child alone. All the finances were on me, and there was just, I had no business background. I didn't know nothing about a business plan. I didn't know anything about fundraising, funding, going to investors, having a pitch deck. I knew absolutely nothing. So I was starting from square, -100. I don't know. I was gonna say square one, but like just even lower than that. But I did it anyways because I knew that the Lord had a call and a purpose for my life. Remember the guy, Robert, who I told you was my friend before starting all this? he's still an essential part of this entire story. So in October of 2023, I finally decided to go ahead and go to Uganda. I had been wanting to do it for many years. I had tried a couple of times, failed, then got pregnant. Life just kept moving on. I kind of was like, I don't know if this is ever gonna happen, but for some reason, I felt a really strong call to helping these orphan children in Uganda. And during the time, I had kind of dabbled a little bit in sharing their stories through my business and having fundraisers, just trying to raise awareness, but I hadn't like fully incorporated them with my business. Fully. October of 2023, I decided to go. That's a miracle in itself of how that even happened. That would have to be another story as well. But I got there and I saw the conditions of these kids and my heart was moved. And I also fell in love with these children. They were the most joyful, kind, funny, loving, caring kids that I had ever encountered. And despite their living circumstances, they were still full of joy and hope. I spent 2 weeks with them there, and we were able to raise a good amount of money in order to help them continue in their school. So we paid off all their school fees, got to buy them new clothes, books, toys, whole bunch of stuff, spent the time spoiling them, but I did have to come back home. Once I came back home, y'all, I felt conviction, heaviness, just like this burden had been placed on my heart. I felt like I really couldn't just like go one time and be like, hey world, look at what I did. Although we did do a lot of great things that one time, I didn't want it to end there. And so I decided to try to figure out a way to incorporate my business with this orphanage. But y'all, I will say Christmas season was great, but at January 2024 of this year, my business was struggling. I was still operating out of my house. I was a one-person team. I felt like a failure. I had been doing it for 4 years and it was like nothing was working. What the heck is wrong with me? Why am I still in the same place? Why am I doing even worse than I was, 2 years ago? Why? And I felt sad. I was angry with the world. I was angry with the state of the world. I was angry that these children were out there living in these harsh, extreme poverty conditions and nobody was doing anything about it. And finally, I was like, you know what, God? I give you my business. I'm tired of trying to do things my own way. I give you everything. I give you my life. You do whatever you want. God was like, start giving. I was like, I do give. He was like, no, don't give from your profits, give from your revenue. And so I actually decided to start giving 5% of my revenue to these kids directly. And that was scary, I'll be honest. I didn't really want to do it. I was like, I kind of need that 5%. He's like, no, give it away. So I started doing that, being faithful in the giving. And then as well, I started being like, there has to be something that I can do to source from them. There has to be something else I can do. So in October, when I was there, Robert convinced me to take home a bunch of coffee. And I really didn't want to take home the coffee at all. We kind of argued about it. And he was like, just get this coffee. I'm gonna gift it to you, take the coffee. So I decided to take the coffee. And it was sourced from Ugandan farms. So I just had this coffee in this box for the longest time until Robert said, until I heard the Lord say, use that coffee in your products. And then I realized I could actually be using this coffee, sourcing the coffee from them continually with my brand and supporting these kids on a whole other level. So We started using the coffee. I told Robert, let's source your coffee. He was really excited about it. And we started sourcing our coffee from them. And so that's how it all kind of intertwined with my business and how we've been able to help these kids in Uganda in the same way. That being said, there is a ton of work left to do, not even just for my business, but also for these kids. But that's kind of how it all began, how it all ties together, and how we're able to make a real impact. Since my decision, we have actually been able to this year pay off 2 of their terms, which for 70 kids is roughly $6,000 to $7,000. We've been able to pay that off, provide them with food, sustainability, and although we're still continuing to work on it, there's a lot more to be done. My business has grown a lot since January when it was failing. We actually moved into our own production studio. I now have 2 workers who are working for me. I have won over $10,000 in grants, and that number is continuing to grow. And there's just so much good that is starting to happen. Our orders, our revenue has increased by 30%. Our online presence has increased by 400%. There's just so much good that's happening through this. And all it took was me just saying yes to God and being obedient. So that's kind of the story of how it began. Where it's going, I can't quite tell you that yet, but I do know from where we began at the beginning of the year to where we are 9 months later, we're sitting on something special. So I hope you enjoyed the story. If you have any questions, leave me some questions in the comments. I hope it made sense. I know it's a little bit of like, what the heck? But that kind of tends to be what happens when God is creating something. You can't always see what He's using each piece for, but God is the masterpiece. God is the creator of masterpieces, and He has a way of weaving every piece together, even if it doesn't seem like it makes sense. And I feel like this business, Freedom Creators Co., and my life is really a reflection of that. So if you guys want to follow along this wild journey, please, once again, like, subscribe, comment, let me know what you think. And as always, choose freedom.